Gray Caldwell savored the last bite of his turkey sandwich, brushing crumbs from his work uniform as the spring breeze filtered through his truck window. The logistics yard hummed with activity forklifts beeping, trucks backing up the rhythm of Ashton freight that had marked his day for the past 8 years. He crumpled the sandwich wrapper and tossed it into the paper bag on the passenger seat. 20 minutes remained of his lunch break, just enough time to close his eyes. His phone vibrated against the cup holder in Gray's side. Probably another urgent delivery request. He grabbed the phone without checking the caller ID. Caldwell. Hello, Mr. Caldwell? This is Margaret Reynolds from Summit Valley Bank. I'm calling regarding your mortgage loan. Gray frowned. Which mortgage loan? My house is with First Oregon. A pause. Sir, I'm calling about the $400,000 loan that was opened 3 months ago. We're conducting routine verification calls. Gray's hand tightened around the phone. There must be some mistake. I haven't taken out any loans recently. Mr. Caldwell, our records show a mortgage loan was approved under your name and social security number on January 12th. The property is listed at 1483 Willow Ridge Drive. Gray's stomach nodded. That was Delilah's address, his mother-in-law's house. That's impossible. His voice sharpened. I never authorized any loan. Sir, we have all the signed paperwork on file. Well, those papers aren't worth the ink they're printed with because I never signed them. His pulse pounded in his temples. I need more information. Who approved this loan? The loan officer was Thomas Bailey. Would you like his direct line? Yes. He scrawled the number on the back of a receipt, then asked, and what documentation do you have with my signature? We have the standard mortgage agreement, promissory note, and deed of trust. All bearing your signature and social security number. Gray's mouth went dry. I'll be in touch. He ended the call and sat motionless staring at the dashboard for $100,000. His name's social security number. A loan he'd never signed for. Only one person had access to all his information. Only one person would do something like this. The sandwich churned in his stomach. He started the truck and pulled out of the yard without clocking out. The afternoon deliveries would have to wait. Gray waited in the living room, his body rigid on the sofa as the wall clock ticked past 7:30 p.m. The house was quiet except for the home of the dishwasher, the one he'd loaded before leaving for work that morning. Headlights swept across the front window. The garage door rumbled open, then closed. Moments later, Linen breezed in, department store bags dangling from arrests. You wouldn't believe the sale at Nordstrom today, she announced, dropping her purse on the counter. I got that dress I showed you last week for half. She stopped noticing his expression. What's wrong? Gray studied his wife's face, the slight widening of her eyes, the flicker of something that might have been worry or guilt. Summit Valley Bank called me today. His voice was calm, controlled. Lennon busied herself with the shopping bags. Oh, what do they want? They wanted to verify a mortgage loan. A $400,000 mortgage loan in my name. The bag slipped from Lennon's fingers. She retrieved it quickly, avoiding his gaze. That's strange. Must be a mix-up. That's what I thought too. Gray stood and moved toward her until they told me it was for your mother's house. Lennon's face flushed. What are you talking about? Don't lie to me, Lennon. Gray's voice remained level. The loan is in my name with my social security number for your mother's property. You signed it. Lennon's voice rose. Don't you remember? Mom was refinancing and you agreed to co-sign because her credit wasn't good enough. Gray stepped closer. I never signed anything. Yes, you did. It was that night after dinner at Mom's. She brought out the papers. I've never signed mortgage papers at your mother's house or anywhere else. He held her gaze, unflinching. Show me proof. Show me the papers with my signature. Lennon's composure cracked. Tears welled in her eyes as she backed away. Why are you doing this? You're scaring me. I'm scaring you. Gray laughed without humor. You know what's scary? Finding out someone opened a loan in your name. Finding out your wife is lying to your face. You're being ridiculous. Lennon's voice cracked. I need to call my mom. She'll straighten this out. Yes, call her. Tell her I know what you did. Gray's jaw tightened. Tell her I'm about to find out exactly how this happened. Lennon grabbed her phone and stormed upstairs, sobbing loudly enough for him to hear. Gray remained in the kitchen, his hands pressed flat against the counter to stop them from shaking. The display of emotion, the immediate deflection, red flag number 1. In 12 years of marriage, he'd seen this pattern before, but never for stakes this high. The Summit Valley Bank lobby smelled of fresh coffee and air freshener. Gray approached the reception desk, his steps measured and deliberate. "I need to speak with Thomas Bailey." 5 minutes later, he sat across from man in his 40s with a neat beard and concerned eyes. "Mr. Caldwell, I understand you have questions about your loan." "It's not my loan," Gray said firmly. "I need to see the documents." Bailey tapped at his keyboard. "I'll need to verify your identity first." After examining Gray's driver's license and having him provide his social security number, Bailey turned his monitor. "Here's the application." And here, he clicked through several screens or the signed documents. Gray leaned forward, scanning the information. Everything matched his name, address, employment history, income. Then he saw it. The signature, a close approximation of his own, but with subtle differences. The G was too looped, the C too angular. "That's not my signature." Bailey frowned. "Sir, are you saying the signature was forged?" "I'm saying I never signed these documents. I never authorized this loan. This is a serious accusation." Bailey lowered his voice. "If what you're saying is true, this constitutes fraud. When were these papers submitted? Was it in person?" Bailey checked the screen. "It shows the papers were submitted by your wife, Lennon Caldwell. She had a notarized power of attorney document." Gray's jaw clenched. "May I see a copy of that too?" Bailey printed the documents. The power of attorney formed bore another forged signature, dated 6 months earlier when Gray had been on a 3-day business trip to Seattle. "I'd like copies of everything," Gray said, his voice hollow. Bailey hesitated. "Mr. Caldwell, if you're alleging fraud, we need to involve our security department." "Not yet." Gray to get deep breath. "I need time to sort this out. I understand this is difficult, but if fraud has occurred, I know." Gray met his eyes. "I'll be back." Soon, he walked out clutching the folder of documents, the weight of betrayal settling on his shoulders like a physical presence. The bright spring day seemed suddenly darker as he climbed into his truck and sat, staring at nothing. How had it come to this? 12 years of marriage and now forged signatures and hidden loans. He needed to understand what had happened, not just the mechanics of the fraud, but how the woman he trusted with his life had become someone capable of this betrayal. Gray drove aimlessly, eventually parking at Riverside Park where they'd had their first date. The irony wasn't lost on him as he watched families with young children playing on swings, the future he and Lennon had once planned. His mind drifted back to their beginnings 10 years ago. Lennon's bright smile when she bartended at O'Malley's, the way she'd remembered his drink order after just one visit, their whirlwind romance culminating in a modest wedding at the Ashton Community Church. The first warning signs had appeared early, 3 months after they married. Lennon maxed out her first credit card on clothes and shoes. She'd cried, promised to be more careful, and Gray had paid it off, believing her tears were genuine remorse rather than a calculated strategy. Then came the calls from Delilah. Her roof was leaking, her car needed repairs, her property taxes were overdue. Each time, Lennon would plead with those same tearful eyes, "She's my mom, Gray, we have to help her," and he had helped time and again. He'd refinanced their own modest home to cover Delilah's back taxes. He dipped into his 401k to pay for her medical bills when she claimed her insurance wouldn't cover a procedure. He'd co-signed for Lennon's car when her credit score tanked after another maxed-out card. But he'd drawn the line last year when Delilah wanted to renovate her kitchen. "We can't keep doing this," he'd told Lennon. "We need to save for our own future." Lennon had sulked for weeks, making subtle jabs about his stinginess. Delilah had become cold during family gatherings, making comments about men who didn't understand family loyalty. Gray had stood firm. For the first time, he'd chosen their financial security over keeping the peace. Now he understood the cost of that decision. That he started the truck and headed home. The time for remembering was over. Now he needed answers, and he knew exactly how to get them. Gray entered their bedroom to find Lennon in her pajamas, scrolling through her phone. She'd been avoiding him since their confrontation 2 days earlier, claiming headaches and falling asleep on the couch. "We need to talk." He closed the door behind him. Lennon set down her phone. "I've been trying to reach the bank to sort out this misunderstanding." "Stop." Gray's voice was quiet but firm. "I went to the bank. I saw the documents and I saw my forged signature on papers I never signed. He pulled the copies from his bag and placed them on the bed. I saw a power of attorney I never authorized dated when I was in Seattle for that delivery conference. Lennon's face paled. Gray, just tell me the truth. For once, tell me the truth. Tears filled her eyes as she stared at the papers. Mom was going to lose the house. She whispered the bank was foreclosing. They'd already sent final notices. So you committed fraud. I had no choice. Lennon's voice rose with a hint of hysteria. What was I supposed to do? Let her be homeless? You could have talked to me. Gray's control slipped, his voice thundering through the room. You could have been honest instead of forging my name and stealing my identity. You would have said no. Lennon shot back. You'd already refused to help with her kitchen. A kitchen renovation isn't the same as preventing foreclosure. And you know it. Gray paced the room. Why didn't she sell, downsize, get a job? Why was fraud your first option? It wasn't like that. Lennon wiped at her tears. Rhett, Mom's financial advisor. He said this was the only way. The market's terrible for selling right now. And Mom's too old to start over somewhere else. Rhett. Gray repeated name. Rhett Blanton, the mortgage broker. Lennon nodded. So your mother's financial advisor convinced you to commit fraud? Gray shook his head in disbelief. Do you have any idea what you've done? What this means for us, for me? It was going to be temporary. Lennon pleaded. Mom's applying for a reverse mortgage. Once that comes through, she'll pay this one off. With what money? Your mother hasn't worked in 10 years. She has investments. Stop lying. Gray slammed his hand against the wall, making Lennon flinch. Everything you say is a lie. Everything. Silence fell between them, heavy and final. When Gray spoke again, his voice was eerily calm. You buried me without a shovel. Lennon, you took my name, my credit, my trust, all without a second thought. Gray, please. I'm leaving. He moved to the closet and pulled out a duffel bag. I can't stay here. Where are you going? Panic edged in Lennon's voice. Away from you. Lennon followed him around the room as he packed clothes and essentials. You can't just leave. We need to fix this together. Gray zipped the bag and faced her. There's no we anymore. You made sure of that. It was for my mother. No. Gray slung the bag over his shoulder. It was for you. It's always been for you, what you want, what you need, what makes you look good. This time you went too far. He walked out without looking back, her sobs echoing behind him. The spring night air felt cleansing as he threw his bag into the truck and drove away from 12 years of memories and one unforgivable betrayal. Jonas Pruitt answered the door in sweatpants and a faded Marines t-shirt, a beer in hand. His eyes narrowed when he saw Gray's face. Who died? My marriage. Gray stood on the porch, duffel bag in hand. Can I crash here for a few days? Jonas stepped aside without hesitation. Mi casa and all that. Beer's in the fridge. Gray dropped his bag in the spare room and joined Jonas in the living room. The house was spartanly furnished, but clean, much like Jonas himself. 20 years of friendship meant few words were needed as Jonas handed him a cold bottle and sat across from him. Want to talk about it? Or would you prefer to get drunk in silence? Gray took a long pull from the bottle. Lennon forged my signature on a $400,000 mortgage for Delilah's house. Jonas let out a low whistle. Jesus Christ. Yeah, how do you find out? Bank called to verify. I went and saw the papers. Jonas nodded, his expression darkening. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Gray leaned back, exhaustion hitting him. Divorce, obviously. But the loan, that's trickier. You're not considering paying it, are you? Hell no. Gray shook his head, but I need to protect myself. Make sure this doesn't ruin me. Jonas took a thoughtful sip. Rhett Blanton involved. Gray's eyes snapped to his friend's face. How'd you know? Small town. Delilah's been hanging around him for months. Seen them at the landing a few times. Jonas set his beard down. He's helped more than a few people go bankrupt in this town. What do you mean? Guy's a predator. Finds people in financial trouble. Offers creative solutions that end up being fraud, then disappears when it all falls apart. Jonas's jaw tightened. Coach with his kid a few seasons back. Even then got weird vibes. Gray processed this information. Lennon mentioned him. Called him Delilah's financial advisor. Jonas snorted. Yeah, I bet. Word is he targets desperate women, especially ones with assets or relatives with good credit. Like me, like you. Jonas met his gaze. You need to protect yourself, man. This isn't just about Lennon anymore. Blanton's dangerous not with his fists but with paperwork and loopholes. Gray nodded, the beard turning bitter in his mouth. I'll start making calls tomorrow. Use my office if you need privacy. Jonas grabbed another beer from the fridge. And Gray, don't tell Lennon where you're staying. Not yet. Gray raised an eyebrow. You think she'd come here? I think she'll do whatever Delilah and Blanton tell her to do. Jonas's expression was grim. And they'll want to know what you're planning. Gray stared at the ceiling, seeing the pieces connect. This wasn't just a desperate act to save Delilah's house. This was calculated, planned, and he'd been the target across town at the ground-up cafe. Delilah Short nervously stirred her latte, checking her watch for the third time in 5 minutes. When Rhett Blanton finally sauntered in 20 minutes late, she waved him over with forced casualness. You're late, she hissed as he sat down, had another client. Rhett adjusted his silk tie too flashy for Ashton's modest downtown. What's so urgent? Gray knows. Delilah leaned forward about the loan. He confronted Lennon. And now he's left her. Rhett's expression remained unchanged. Did he go to the police? Not yet. Lennon doesn't think he will. Where's he staying? We don't know. He's not answering calls or texts. Rhett sifted his coffee, unconcerned. Let him cool off. Most men come back once they realize divorce is expensive. And if he doesn't, if he goes to the bank or the police, Rhett set down his cup. Nobody believes a bitter husband, Delilah. The system's on our side. What do you mean? I mean, courts see this all the time. Husband claims forgery during a separation. It rarely sticks. He pat at her hand. Besides, we have the notarized power of attorney. That Lennon faked that your daughter had notarized by a legitimate notary who won't remember the specifics. Rhett's smile didn't reach his eyes. As long as you both stick to the story that Gray authorized this, we're fine. Delilah's shoulders relaxed slightly. What about the money? The reverse mortgage application is being processed. Rhett cut her off. It's going to take time like I told you. But the investment opportunity you mentioned is still there waiting for you. Rhett's smile widened. Trust me, Delilah. 6 months from now you'll thank me. Gray will have crawled back to Lennon. Your house will be secure. And that $400,000 will have turned into much more. Delilah nodded, reassured by his confidence. I should go. Lennon needs me right now. Tell her to stick to the story. Gray signed the papers. Period. Rhett stood. And Delilah, if Gray contacts the bank again, I need to know immediately. As Delilah hurried out, Rhett remained at the table, scrolling through his phone. He opened a text to someone named Marcus, called while situation heating up. Might need cleanup sooner than we thought. Gray returned to work 3 days later. His eyes shadowed from sleepless nights. He'd answered questions about his sudden absence with vague mentions of family issues. But the rumor mill was already churning in the break room. He poured coffee strong enough to strip paint, hoping it would clear the fog in his brain. You look like roadkill, Maisie Tran announced, entering with her own mug. The logistics coordinator never minced words. One reason Gray had always respected her. Thanks for the update. Rough weekend. She leaned against the counter, her dark eyes assessing. Gray shrugged. You could say that. Maisie filled her cup. Heard you walked out mid-shift on Friday. Not your style. Like I said, family issues. She stirred creamer into her coffee. Also not your style to dodge questions. She glanced around to ensure they were alone. Look, you don't have to tell me. But if you need help with something, I'm pretty good with computers and secrets. Gray studied her. Maisie had worked at Ashton Freight for 3 years. She was smart, capable. And if office chatter was to be believed, had grown up with an abusive father and a mother who'd stolen her identity when she was 18, she understood betrayal. While I'm dealing with it's complicated. Most things are. She sipped her coffee. My boyfriend works at Summit Valley Bank in their cybersecurity department. Gray froze. How did you small town? Maisie shrugged. Plus you left your phone on your desk when you rushed out. I saw the caller ID. That's an invasion of privacy. Absolutely. I'm not arguing that point. She met his gaze directly. But I'm offering help if you want it. Gray weighed his options. He needed information, needed allies. And Maisie, for all her brashness, was trustworthy. If I tell you, it stays between us. No gossip, no rumors. Scout's honor. She raised her hand. Though I was never a scout. Gray explained the situation and clipped sentences: the loan, the forgery, the betrayal. Maisie listened without interrupting, her expression hardening. I need to know more about Rhett Blanton. Gray finished. And about this loan. Where the money went. Maisie nodded. I can help with that. Public records, dark web tools. I have access to things most people don't. Is that legal? A half smile. Mostly. The question is, what do you want to do with what I find? Gray considered this. I want to protect myself. And I want justice. Those aren't the same thing. I know. Maisie sat down her mug. Give me a few days. I'll see what I can dig up. As she left, Gray felt something shift inside him. The shock was giving way to a cold, focused anger. He wasn't just protecting himself anymore. He was building a case, preparing for war, like a man sharpening a knife. The law office of Catherine Wu occupied the second floor of a converted Victorian downtown. Gray sat in a leather chair across from the attorney who read through the documents with a furrow between her brows. This is textbook fraud. Mr. Caldwell, she said, finally setting down the papers. But proving it will be complicated. Why? It's not my signature. Because it's your wife who committed the fraud. We'll lean forward. Spousal identity theft cases are messy. Courts tend to assume couples share financial decisions. But we didn't. I never authorized this. I believe you. Wu's expression was sympathetic but realistic. The problem is we'll need to prove it. The notarized power of attorney makes this particularly difficult. Gray felt his hope faltering. So I'm stuck with this debt. I didn't say that. Wu tapped her pen against the documents. We can fight this, but we need to be strategic. First, report the fraud to the credit bureaus. Second, follow police report. Yes, against your wife. She added, seeing his expression. Third, we gather evidence. What kind of evidence? Communications about the loan bank visit records, proof you were in Seattle when the power of attorney was supposedly signed. Wu's eyes narrowed. And information about this replant and his involvement complicates things, but might also help us. Mortgage fraud is a federal offense. Gray nodded slowly. I have someone helping me gather information. Good. The more ammunition, the better. We'll hand it in record. We'll need to move quickly. The longer that loan exists, the harder it becomes to untangle. Grace to believe, then hesitated. There's one more thing. Divorce. Wu nodded. I suspected as much. We can file those papers next week. Given the circumstances, we'll push for an expedited process. As Gray walked to his truck, his phone buzzed with a text from Maisie. Found something. Meet at the coffee station. 7 p.m. He felt the weight of the knife in his hand, its edge growing sharper. Gray filed for divorce on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, Lennon was calling and texting incessantly. By Tuesday evening, mutual friends were reaching out with confusion and concern. Is it true? Asked Jeff, a friend from their bowling league. Lennon's saying you abandoned her. That you've been emotionally abusive. Gray's laugh held no humor. Of course she is. What happened, man? You two always seemed solid. Gray ended the call without answering. Lennon's narrative didn't surprise him, but the speed with which she deployed it did. She was trying to control the story to paint herself as the victim before the truth. Emerge Point 2 could play that game. That night, using an anonymous account, Gray posted on Ashton Community Connect, the town's popular forum, seeking advice. If someone forged your signature on a $400,000 loan, would you go to the police or try to handle it privately? Asking for legal and personal perspectives. No names for privacy reasons. The responses flooded in immediately. That's identity theft. Report it. Police won't do much if it's family. Get a lawyer. Who would do such a thing? That's criminal. Gray watched the discussion explode, dropping subtle details and follow-up comments. Never mentioning names, but including enough specifics that anyone who knew them might connect the dots. By morning, Lennon was at Jonas's door, pounding furiously. I know he's in there. Gray, come out, you coward. Jonas blocked the entrance. Lennon, go home. You're making a scene. He's destroying my reputation. That post, everyone knows it's about me. What post? Jonas's confusion was genuine. Gray hadn't told him. On the community forum, Lennon's mascara was smeared from crying. He's turning the whole town against me. From inside, Gray listened without revealing himself. This was exactly what he'd expected. Lennon's concern was her reputation. Not the crime she'd committed. Not the damage she'd done to him. After Lennon finally left, Jonas found Gray in the kitchen. Care to explain what that was about? Gray showed him the forum post. Jonas whistled. Clever. No names, but enough details. She threw the first punch. Gray's voice was flat. Told everyone I was abusive. And now people are guessing the truth. Jonas nodded slowly. The tide's turning. Not fast enough. Gray checked his watch. I'm eating maize tonight. She found something. Be careful, man. Jonas's expression turned serious. Remember what I said about Blanton? These aren't good people you're dealing with. Gray nodded. The knife in his mind now honed to deadly sharpness. Neither am I. Not anymore. The coffee station buzzed with after-work crowds. Gray found Maze in a back corner. Her laptop opened in a second, coffee waiting for him. You look better, she observed as he sat down. Less like roadkill. More like someone who got hit by a bicycle. Progress. Gray sipped the coffee. What did you find? Maze turned her laptop toward him. The loan documents originated from Blanton's brokerage as expected. But here's where it gets interesting. She pointed to bank records on the screen. The $400,000 didn't stay in Delilah's account. Most of it transferred to something called Phoenix Opportunity Fund. What's that? A shell company. Maze's eyes gleamed with the thrill of the hunt. Registered in Delaware with connections to 3 other similar entities. All linked to Blanton. Gray frowned. I don't understand. Your mother-in-law didn't use the money to save her house. Maze's voice dropped. She refinanced, pulled the equity, and invested it in what appears to be a pyramid scheme. Run by her friend, Rhett. Gray stared at her. Are you sure? 100%. Maze clicked through more documents. I found forum posts on investor sites warning about Phoenix. It promises 20% returns through exclusive real estate opportunities. But no one's seen a dime. So the money's gone. Most likely. Maze nodded grimly. And here's the kicker, Delilah's house wasn't in foreclosure. She was behind on payments, yes, but nowhere near losing it. The realization hit Gray like a physical blow. It wasn't desperation. It was greed. Looks that way. Maze closed her laptop. There's more. Blanton's done this before, convinced vulnerable women to commit fraud for emergency money that ends up in his investment schemes. 2 cases in Portland last year, 1 in Eugene. Why isn't he in jail? The victims were too embarrassed to press charges where they couldn't prove he knew about the fraud. Maze shrugged. He's careful about what he puts in writing. Gray absorbed this information. His anger crystallizing into something harder, colder. I need copies of everything already compiled. Maze handed him a USB drive. What are you going to do with it? Gray pocketed the drive in them. Gray met with Catherine the next morning presenting Maze's findings. The attorney reviewed everything with sharp attention. This changes our approach. She said, finally, we're not just fighting fraud. Now we're exposing a pattern of predatory behavior. How do we proceed? Carefully. We tap the USB drive. First, we submit this evidence to Summit Valley Bank's fraud department. They have a vested interest in pursuing this. It's their money at risk. Gray nodded. And then we anonymously send copies to local media. Wu's smile was thin. Thanks, hate publicity about security failures. They'll move quickly once reporters start asking questions. Gray left Wu's office and drove straight to Summit Valley. He asked for Thomas Bailey, the loan officer, and was directed to a conference room where Bailey waited with a woman in a tailored suit. Mr. Caldwell, this is Elaine Martinez, head of our fraud investigation unit, Bailey introduced. We understand you have information about the loan we discussed. Gray handed over a copy of the USB drive and watched their expressions as he summarized Maisie's findings. Martinez's professional demeanor slipped momentarily when he mentioned Phoenix Opportunity Fund. We're familiar with Mr. Blanton's activities, she said carefully. This isn't the first time his name has come up in our investigations. Then why is he still operating? Gray couldn't keep the edge from his voice. Lack of concrete evidence linking him directly to the fraudulent applications. Martinez explained, but this, she held up the drive, could change that. What happens next? We'll launch a full investigation. Martinez's tone was clipped efficient. I'll need a formal statement from you, denying authorization of this loan. Once we verify these documents, we'll likely involve federal authorities. Gray left the bank feeling oddly calm. The first strike had landed. That evening, he created an anonymous email account and sent copies of the evidence to 3 local news outlets: the Ashton Observer, Valley News Network, and the state's largest paper, the Oregonian. The subject line read, Mortgage Fraud Ring Operating in Western Oregon. Within a week, the first article appeared vague on details but mentioning an investigation into alleged fraudulent mortgage practices at a local brokerage. 2 days later, a more detailed piece named Rhett Blanton directly. The bank's internal panic was invisible to outsiders, but Gray received daily updates from Maisie, whose boyfriend reported emergency meetings and document reviews throughout the lending department. Rhett Blanton's office closed temporarily for renovations. His sleek BMW disappeared from the country club parking lot. The knife had found its mark. Gray remained calm, patient, watching the pieces fall one by one. Lennon's carefully constructed victim narrative began to crumble as whispers spread through Ashton. Her tearful accounts of abandonment found fewer sympathetic ears as rumors of fraud circulated. Gray heard through Jonas that she'd started avoiding their usual social spots, the bowling alley, the landing bar, even her yoga class. Her isolation was self-imposed as friends either connected the dots from the forum post or simply tired of her contradictory stories. The final blow came when Providence Ashton Medical Center, where Lennon worked as an administrative assistant, placed her on administrative leave. They found out Maisie reported scrolling through her phone at lunch. Someone sent an anonymous email to the hospital administration about the investigation. Gray raised an eyebrow. "I didn't do that. Neither did I." Maisie shrugged, "But it's a small town. Word travels." That evening, as Gray returned to Jonas's house, Lennon was waiting in the driveway. Her eyes red-rimmed, her appearance disheveled in a way he'd never seen before. "What have you done?" she demanded as he stepped from the truck. "They suspended me. People won't even look at me at the grocery store." "I haven't done anything, Lennon." Gray kept his voice neutral. "The truth is doing all the work." "What truth?" "Your twisted version." She stepped closer, her composure slipping. "You've turned everyone against me. My friends, my co-workers. You forged my signature on a $400,000 loan." Gray's words cut through her accusations. "You stole my identity. You betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way possible." "I did it for my mother." "No." Gray locked eyes with her. "You did it so your mother could invest in Rhett Blanton's pyramid scheme. There was no foreclosure emergency. Just greed and stupidity." Lennon's face paled. "That's not true. Mom needed." "Stop lying, Lennon. I have the bank records. I know where the money went." Gray stepped around her toward the house. "It's over. The bank is investigating. The media is investigating. It's just a matter of time now." "You're ruining my life." Lennon grabbed his arm. "Is that what you want? To destroy me?" Gray gently removed her hand. "You did this, Lennon. Not me. We can fix this." She pleaded desperation in every word. "Together, we can tell the bank it was a misunderstanding, that you changed your mind about the loan." "Goodbye, Lennon." As he walked toward the house, her voice turned bitter behind him. "You always were a coward, Gray, running away instead of fighting for us." Gray stopped, turned. "I'm not running, Lennon. I'm finally standing my ground." He closed the door, leaving her alone in the driveway with the consequences of her actions. 2 weeks later. Gray requested a meeting through his attorney. Catherine Wu arranged a conference room at her office, neutral ground for what would be their final encounter. Lennon arrived first, now polished and put together, her vulnerable act replaced with cool determination. Delilah followed, clutching her designer handbag like armor. Gray entered last, placing 3 manila folders on the table before sitting across from them. Weir remained by the door, a silent witness. "Thank you for coming." Gray began, his voice steady. "Let's skip the pleasantries." Delilah snapped. "What do you want?" "I want nothing from you." Gray met her gaze without flinching. "This meeting is about what's going to happen next." "Is this blackmail?" Lennon demanded, "Because if you think you can threaten us, no threats." Gray opened the first folder. "Just facts. File number 1, a copy of the forged loan document, along with my affidavit denying authorization. The bank's fraud department has already verified that the signature isn't mine." He slid the folder toward them. Neither woman touched it. "File number 2, Gray continued, opening the second folder, a complete list of Delilah's failed investments, including $380,000 transferred to Phoenix Opportunity Fund, Rhett Blanton's pyramid scheme. The money's gone, by the way. The FBI raided his office yesterday." Delilah's face drained of color. "That's impossible. Rhett promised." "He lied." Gray's voice remained calm. "Just like you both lied to me." "What's in the third folder?" Lennon asked, her voice small. "A civil lawsuit naming both of you as defendants." Gray opened it to reveal the legal documents inside. Fraud, identity theft, defamation. My attorney filed it this morning. Silence fell across the room. Delilah's hands trembled. Lennon stared at the folders, her facade cracking. You can't do this, Delilah whispered. We're family. We were family. Gray stood until you decided my name, my credit, and my reputation were acceptable collateral damage for your get-rich-quick scheme. It wasn't like that. Lennon protested weakly. It was exactly like that. Gray gathered the folders. Criminal charges are being considered separately by the district attorney. My attorney will be in touch about deposition dates. He moved toward the door, then paused, turning back to deliver one final line. You thought I'd be your lifeline, but I'm the anchor now. As he walked out, Delilah's angry sobs and Lennon's stunned silence followed him into the hallway. The confrontation was over. Justice was beginning. The legal system moved slowly but inexorably through spring and into summer. The consequences of Lennon and Delilah's actions unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony. Lennon was charged with fraud and identity theft, eventually accepting a plea deal to avoid trial. The terms included probation, community service, and mandatory financial counseling. Her employment at a hospital was permanently terminated. Delilah filed for bankruptcy as Phoenix Opportunity Fund collapsed. The equity in her house. Gray and Lennon's retirement savings vanished into the pockets of Rhett's early investors. The classic structure of a Ponzi scheme. Rhett Blanton faced multiple federal indictments. His arrest at the Portland International Airport attempting to flee to Mexico made headlines across the state. The FBI identified 17 victims of a scheme with total losses exceeding $2 million. Gray didn't attend the hearings or follow the media coverage. He'd done what was necessary to protect himself and see justice served. The rest, the public humiliation, the legal consequences would unfold without his participation. His civil lawsuit settled quietly. The insurance company covering Summit Valley Bank's liability paid to clear his credit and cover his legal fees. The divorce finalized with remarkable speed. Lennon foregoing any claims to their joint assets in exchange for Gray dropping certain aspects of the civil suit. Through it all, Gray maintained his routine work, occasional dinners with Jonas, weekend hikes in the hills outside town. The anger that had fueled him gradually transformed into something quieter, more resolute. Not peace exactly, but clarity that he'd been tested, betrayed, nearly destroyed by the people he trusted most. And he'd survived. More than survived, he'd prevailed. The final threads of his old life severed the day he signed the papers selling their house. Lennon had moved in with her sister in Spokane, leaving him to divide their possessions and close this chapter alone. As the new owners took the keys, Gray felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The home that had witnessed 12 years of his life, both the happy early days and the bitter end, belonged to someone else now. His past was truly behind him. Gray found a small house on the eastern edge of Ashton where the town gave way to forests and rolling hills, 2 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and enough distance from his old life to breathe freely. Maisie helped him rebuild his credit, navigating the complexities of identity theft recovery with the same precision she brought to logistics at work. Her assistance had evolved into a genuine friendship, one based on respect rather than shared history. You're almost back to your pre-Lennon credit score, she announced one day, reviewing his latest report. Another 6 months and it'll be like it never happened. Gray nodded. Financially, maybe. Maisie closed her laptop. The other stuff takes longer. I know. Jonas appeared regularly with 6-packs and invitations to the gym. You're getting soft, he complained, dragging Gray to weight sessions and pick-up basketball games. The physical exertion helped on the nights when sleep evaded him. When the betrayal replayed in his mind like a film he couldn't shut off. Gray wasn't happy, not in the uncomplicated way he'd once been. But he was free. The lessons have been brutal but clear. Trust must be earned, not given. Forgiveness is optional, not mandatory. And sometimes justice is the only closure available. One evening, as summer faded in an early fall, Gray unlocked the small safe in his bedroom closet. Inside lay the folder of documents from the entire ordeal of the forged loan papers, the legal settlements, the divorce decree, physical reminders of the year his life had imploded. With deliberate movements, he added one final item, a copy of the forged signature that had started it all. He studied it for a long moment, seeing not just the fraudulent curves of the letters but the betrayal they represented. Then he closed the safe, locking away the evidence not as a monument to pain, but as a reminder not of what had been done to him, but of what he would never tolerate again. Outside, the setting sun painted his new porch in golden light. Gray sat in a wooden chair, watching shadows lengthen across the yard. In the distance, Ashton's lights began to twinkle as dusk descended. He wasn't the same man who had answered that fateful phone call 6 months ago. That man had been buried by betrayal. But in his place stood someone stronger, wiser, and unafraid to fight for what was right. Someone who had lost much, but gained something perhaps more valuable, the knowledge that he could survive the worst and still stand tall. Not happy, perhaps, but victorious.